So let's think about just a moment. I was going to come out here and tell you some little story about an Amazon outage from 2015 where Netflix weathered the storm really well and other companies didn't. But holy smokes, we just saw it up on stage. And I'll tell you, yes, right? That was in production. And I'll tell you, in backstage, Sabu, his face was delighted. Jay just looked super relieved. So really amazing stuff. And this is what we see these heroes doing. Really fantastic. All right. I now have the great pleasure of introducing our final speaker for today. And I will tell you a little secret. It was almost a year ago when I was at VMworld in Barcelona, and I was walking down the hallway with Ian, and he leaned over to me, and he whispered, VMware is acquiring Heptio. This was about 10 minutes before the announcement went live. And what flashed before my eyes in that moment was, how fabulous is that? Heptio had formed this company and had amassed a set of talented individuals who were out there doing amazing things with Kubernetes. Of course, at the helm of that company were two of the founders of Kubernetes, Craig McLuckie and Joe Beda. And they really have created an all-star team. By that time, I already felt like I knew Joe because I had been watching TGIK. And if you don't know about it, it's Thank God It's Kubernetes on Fridays at 1 o'clock. And I feel like I had gotten to know Joe by then. And so it is with tremendous pleasure today that I introduce you to my colleague, Joe Beda.
Thank you so much, Cornelia, for that great introduction. And I should say that TGIK is 1 p.m. on Pacific time, which is like the worst time zone when you look around the world. It's like midnight or like Saturday morning, so people should probably be out celebrating versus watching me play around with Kubernetes. But this talk, I don't want to talk about Kubernetes. Well, mostly. I'm tired of giving talks about Kubernetes. I'm tired about having nothing but pictures of shipping containers on slides. Hopefully we can move past that and talk about some other stuff. Instead, I want to talk about Lego, because I love Legos. If you go to my house, I'm out of shelves. I have more sets than I have shelves. I love playing with them. The kids are done. They're done with the Legos, but I'm still doing it. I also love analogies, and so I'll try not to actually mix too many of them at once going on in this talk here. All right, so like I said, I have kids, so they're older now, 14 and 11, but when they're really small, you end up buying a lot of these little toys, especially when you're doing things like potty training. And so, you know, the kid wants a car, so you buy a car, and it might look something like this. And then, you know, next week, the kids get into trains. We bought so many Thomas trains, like just piles of them. And then, like, if you have kids, if you've like played with kids, they get super specialized and fixated on some interesting, weird things, like a mix between a train and a car. Right? And these things are really cool. These are like trucks that can actually like adapt for like doing maintenance on rails. And good luck finding a toy like this for your kid, right? This is like, I mean, maybe if you live in Germany, because they have all the cool toys there for stuff like this. But at least I couldn't find something like this. And so I think this is where Lego comes in. And so this is a quote from the son of the founder of Lego. All elements fit together, can be used in multiple ways, and can be built together. And I think this really sums up sort of why Lego has endured, why people love it, why I love it, is that it's this idea that you're not just buying a toy, you're actually buying something and buying into something that is bigger than just that one thing. And that's super, super exciting. So when I was preparing this talk, I couldn't find a picture of a Lego truck that adapted to Rails, but I actually had one at home. So there we go. And one of the things you'll actually notice is that this thing's a little rough around the edges. I mean, when you compare this to the pictures of the train and the car, there's little knobby bumps, and it's a little bit out of proportion compared to the real truck. But like, where else are you going to get sort of a car that rides on rails as a toy? It's amazing that you can do this. And so whether you're looking for a mix between a train and a car, or a car and an airplane, or spaceship, I think the sort of adaptability of Lego is one of the reasons why it endures. All right, so let's do a little bit of a history lesson here. So the Lego system, and there's a cool patent for it, it really just started out just with bricks, and this was around late 50s, 1958. And they would have pictures of like kids playing on the box at that time. And actually, it was the son of the founder. Actually, the quote that I had earlier. His kids were actually on the box, but the thing really took off around 1964 when they started putting an instruction book in with the Lego set. And so the takeaway for me for this is that it's not just about these building blocks, but also what you can build with them and the patterns and the examples of what you can do with these things. Commercially and in terms of sparking people's imagination, that combination of both the building blocks plus the instructions and the patterns that you can follow to put these things together really creates something pretty special. All right, so I'm going to belabor the analogy here and actually spell it out for you. How does this relate to dev platforms? I think that there's a difference in philosophy when you look at infrastructure as a service type of platforms versus platform as a service type of platforms. That's okay, yeah, platform. One of them, I think the infrastructure stuff is really more of a toolbox. It's a set of building blocks that you can put together. Oftentimes, it can be difficult and intimidating to be able to construct a solution out of all these little itty-bitty parts. But you know that, hey, like I have all the parts that I need to be able to do what I need to be able to do. So there's sort of a ground truth that I can get my job done using infrastructure building blocks. But it may be a little bit more work, and it may take a little bit more expertise to put those things together. Platform as a service is instead of a toolbox, it's more of a framework. It's the idea that all the patterns are set, insert code here, boom, I'm off to the races. And what we see is that there's these dichotomies between these things. Oftentimes, platform as a service works great until it doesn't. And then all of a sudden, you're stuck dropping down to something that's a much lower level, and you have this huge disconnect that can oftentimes slow down development teams. And so really, this is about a difference in flexibility and complexity. So there's a sort of a paradox of choice that we've given people across these things. The opinion that platforms bring can make teams and companies and enterprises more productive. Removing that paradox of choice that's sort of frozen within decision can make everybody more productive. Having a standard-sized set of patterns that everybody adopts means that you can actually be more flexible in terms of building new services and moving engineers between different services. That's all great things. But there's always going to be some things that you need to do that don't fit within those patterns. And so for me, the perfect platform is one that actually, those opinions are a matter of policy, not a matter of capability. So that you can take those guardrails off, so you can actually allow for people to break the rules when that's appropriate. So really, we have a spectrum of options for folks, whether it be physical machines, virtual machines, containers, or platform as a service types of things. And my goal, and I think I'm going to bring it back to Kubernetes here, and I think one of the things that we're seeing emerge out of the Kubernetes world is that this isn't about picking one of those abstractions and sticking with it. It's about picking the right abstraction for the problem at hand. It's not an all or nothing type of solution. And oftentimes, this is not on an app-by-app basis, but on a component or microservice-by-microservice basis. You should be able to say, hey, 90% of my app, I'm going to use these tried-and-true patterns that make everybody productive, but there's this tiny thing I got to do over here that's going to be a little bit different. And so you shouldn't have to throw the baby out with the proverbial bathwater to be able to adapt to those situations. All right, so Kubernetes allows you to not only schedule containers, but it's also a universal control plane that allows you to create higher level abstractions, new building blocks based from the building blocks that you already have. So this right here is Voltron. It was a cartoon in the 80s. There was a Netflix reboot in the 2000s, but the Lego Voltron here is based on the 80s one. I'm not super into it, but I understand that people who are very particular about this. Now, the cool thing about Voltron, for those who haven't seen it, is that it's a set of 5 robots that are actually lions, and then those robots can all come together to form this big robot to defeat the bad guy. And so, so that is, again, this modularity of these things that are actually separate, but then come together to create something that's more than the sum of the parts. Now, for me, which actually sort of bakes my noodle a little bit here, is that this is a Lego Voltron. So we're using building blocks to build larger blocks to actually build the robot, right? And I think that sort of analogy really works for what we're doing as we start building platforms based on sort of bridging that gap between infrastructure and platform, between toolbox and framework. We really want to take a bunch of the building blocks that are provided from infrastructure, create extensible, larger building blocks, and in the end, actually provide that opinionated experience, but in a way that's not all or nothing. In a way where if, like the left leg of Voltron, you don't like the color blue, you can trade it out for something else, and you can build your own leg and replace that, but still have reusability across the rest of the parts of the system. And so, again, bringing it back to Kubernetes a little bit, Kubernetes does a decent job scheduling containers, but the thing that I think really has everybody so excited is that it's really a distributed systems kernel. And what I mean is that there are patterns proven in Kubernetes. These are things like the controller pattern, and these things are then being used by things like operators to be able to take the system and expand it. And we're just at the beginning of seeing where we can take this, seeing where we can take these patterns, how we can develop those so that we can provide both the best of both worlds. Really, this infrastructure toolbox so that you know you can get your job done regardless, but also the opinion that makes everybody that much more productive. So we're still at the beginning of some of this. Kubernetes has really caught the attention and sort of seen great success for those who've embraced it. But it's kind of a little bit intimidating for those who are coming at it for the first time when they just want to get their job done. And so the work that faces us now, and why I'm so excited about the future of both Kubernetes and of VMware and Pivotal working together, is that we are looking to actually sort of invest, bridge those gaps, and really build a scalable platform where folks don't have to choose, hey, the efficiencies of platform or the sort of raw sort of capabilities and adaptability of infrastructure, but can really actually bring these things together and pick the right tool for the right job for the problem that they're trying to solve. Thank you very much.